Welcome back to Nerf Game Theory. I am Captain Xavier, and today I'm going to be talking about team balance in casual games. I'll eventually do videos on game balance for competitive games, but that is a whole different topic. Today I'm going to focus on casual games and how to keep them balanced, so to better maximize everyone's fun. That is the whole goal of casual games, obviously, of Nerf in general, is to have fun. We want to try to get everyone to have as much fun as possible. More fun for everyone, as the auxiliary's motto goes. And this is very much part of that philosophy. How do we ensure that the teams are balanced enough that both sides are having fun? Because if one side is horribly disadvantaged and the other side is just absolutely crushing them in every round, the team that's losing is probably not having very much fun. And in fact, the winning team probably isn't having as much fun as they could because it's not challenging, it's not interesting. So how do you get the teams balanced? When should you balance teams? How actively should you balance teams? A lot of that is going to depend on your game, your player base, your style, the scenarios you're running, your location. All of that is going to be something that affects how and when you need to balance teams. But these are some of the basics of what's going to cause an imbalance, how you can deal with those imbalances, some suggestions for what to keep an eye out for. So I'm going to focus in this video on internal sources of imbalance rather than external. External being things like the scenarios or the terrain or stuff like that. Those will also get their own videos. But I'm going to talk about internal, which is going to come from two main sources. The loadouts people are using and the people themselves. So if one team ends up with all of the best blasters, that can cause an imbalance. Not necessarily, but it's one of the factors that might lead to it. And if one side gets all of the best players, that has a good chance to imbalance. But again, possibly not. If one side gets all of the best players and they happen to have all of the best blasters, Lord help the other team. But those are the two major factors that you're going to need to look at. And there's a number of ways to better balance that. When we first started doing Nerf Wars, when we first started doing Nerf Wars at Borst, we would just count off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and hope that the law of averages would create balanced teams. Problem with the law of averages is it's completely unenforced because the probability police are always stuck at a red light somewhere. So we discovered that didn't work so well. So we went with picking team captains. We'd have pick two people as team captains, and they would pick their teams, you, which is the old playground way of doing it. The downside is someone always has to be last, and that never feels good. Also, depending on how experienced your team captains are, they might not create a very good distribution. We would often pick like the two youngest kids to randomly pick, and at that point you might as well doing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You're not going to get the best distribution necessarily. So we switched to a hybrid of the two, where we would have, we would divide the team up by blasters. So we'd have 100 FPS or lower, or generally stock blasters, and then Dart Zone Pro came along and threw stock out the window. We then have mid-range, which is lightly modded blasters, which also include things like Dart Zone Pros or Nexuses or things like that. And then we had what we called the Oh God Why category, which is Caliburns and FDLs and proton packs and stuff. You know who you are if you're in the Oh God Why category. And then we would either count off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 from those three categories, or we'd have team captains pick first from this category, then they'd pick all the people from this category, and then all from that. And that ensured an equal distribution of the loadouts. It didn't necessarily give you the best players, but it gave you at least an equal distribution of loadouts. And we found that this worked so well, we ran into the problem of the teams being so well balanced, nobody could win. We'd end up with, going 45 minutes of a round of Titan Ball with nobody scoring because the teams were just too well balanced. And so that's kind of the pitfall of that. We would also rotate our teams a lot. We would do it between each scenario. So we would play several rounds of Titan Ball, and then we would rotate the teams. And then we'd do several rounds of Capture the Flag, and then we'd rotate the teams. And we'd do several rounds of Carpe, and then we'd rotate the teams. So they were constantly re-rotating the teams, which increased the feeling of a casual game. There was no team affiliation. It wasn't you weren't orange team the whole day and you know hoorah orange team or whatever. You could be orange team one round, green team the next team, orange round team again, or you might end up being orange team the whole time. Who knows? But it helped keep things casual and keep things from getting too heated or people from getting bent out of shape because they're always on the losing team. you tended to rotate through and you were probably going to be on the winning team at least some of the time. And it worked very, very well. You also have like things where people would leave early, or people would show up late, or people's blasters would break and they'd have to switch to something that wasn't as powerful. And so re-rotating the teams kept things fairly balanced all day long. Now that might not work with your situation. You might be doing really long scenarios. I've heard of some where they do hour-long scenarios or even 3-hour-long scenarios. And so you don't really have the opportunity to completely shuffle the teams very often, but you might still be able to make a minor adjustment if it's not, horribly imbalanced. If it's just, okay, we're going to take one person and we're going to go over to this side. And if you want to do it a little more smoothly, you can work it into the scenario. Give the team if you guys can complete this objective, you can, somebody from their team has to defect, or something like that. A mechanism within the game to make it a little less arbitrary. In a casual game, it shouldn't be really a problem, but in more competitive games, obviously, they're not going to want their advantages stripped like that, and that's why competitive games are a different topic. But for the casual games, I find it to be a really good idea to try to maintain as much balance as possible. So, adjusting the teams as often as possible, or even just like in the middle, generally you wouldn't do it in the middle of a round, but you might do it right after the scenario, just say, let's have one person from this team come over there. That's actually how we used to do team rebalancing back in the medieval recreation games. The losing team got a player from the winning team, and that would often then switch things to the other way, and then they'd go back and forth. But sometimes it would just nope, they lost again. You lose a person, lost again. You gain a person, lost again, and you'd end up with just 2 people left on this side, the 2 best players who happen to be on the same team this time, taking on everybody else and still winning. At which point you're like, okay, you 2 are now team captains. Let's redistribute the teams. Because sometimes it really does just come down to 2 really good players who play really well together. And so you may have to balance it that way. So looking at those things that might be causing the imbalance, loadouts and players, if you have one player who has all the best gear, everyone else is running stock and strike blasters, and one person shows up with a proton pack, they can single-handedly mess up the entire game balance. In which case, you might have to do something with them. Now, straight out going, you just can't use that, that's obviously not the best solution, because they obviously spent money on that, they were excited to use it, they came here hoping to use it, and then you just say, no, you can't. They're not going to like that. Now, but in the name of balance, something needs to be done, and there's a whole bunch of things that you can do in that situation. You can say, please only use it, every other round, or only in one round, or only in this specific round, or something to keep it from being horribly imbalanced. Alternatively, there are some scenarios that you can build around that. For instance, Juggernaut. We did Juggernaut when I built Tier, where the Juggernaut, the person with the proton pack, is the objective, and the 2 teams are fighting over control of the Juggernaut, and whoever controls the Juggernaut, it's now on their team, but there's a mechanism to take the Juggernaut over and have it switch to your team. That person gets to use their really cool thing, and in an even cooler way, because now they are a game mechanic. They are important, and that will allow them to use that cool weapon without it creating a horrible imbalance. So things like that. Think of scenarios, creative scenarios, compromises to allow people to have their fun, but without taking away the fun from everybody else. The same thing can be done with really good players. If you've got a couple of really good players, make sure they're not all on the same team. If there's just 2, it's easy. Have them be the team captains all day long, and have them just constantly readjusting the teams. If you've got one really good player, make sure they switch back and forth. You can also perhaps ask them if they're willing to handicap themselves. That is often the best solution, is communication. Just ask them. I will inherently handicap myself, because I know that if I run certain loadouts or I do certain things in rounds, it can horribly imbalance things. And every once in a war, I will usually take the time to really organize my team, form squads together. Here's your job, here's your objective, we're going to do this. And it tends to end up a very one-sided waffle stomp, where it'll be Carpe and we'll get 85 balls to their 4. I think that actually was the distribution once. It was really lopsided. And so I don't do that every round, because that wouldn't be fun for whoever's on the other team. Same thing with shields. I generally limit myself to only using a shield, my big tower shield, 1 scenario per game, because it's broken otherwise. And I'm really hoping that Mega XL will make it a little less broken, and I'll get to run it more often, you know, for the beginning of the round until it gets blown up, and then I'll switch to something else. But that's something that I take upon myself to dynamically and actively, proactively maintain as much team balance as I can, even if it means I have to handicap myself. So be willing to do that in casual games. As nerfers, don't break the game for everybody else, because that's not cool, that's not fun. And as mods, compromise. Find creative ways to overcome whatever imbalance is being created, because they're probably not doing it maliciously. And if you ask them or you give them an alternative, there's a really good chance they're gonna enjoy it, and they might even have more fun doing it that way than they would have had just running around hosing everybody. If they're somebody who's just absolutely unwilling to compromise and are just being a jerk about it, I don't have any sympathy for those people, honestly. That might not be the right game for them. They might want to be in a competitive game, and that you might want to organize that, or they can go organize that, or what have you. As a moderator, it is very important that you learn one specific word and use it when appropriate, and that word is no. You can say no, we're not going to allow that, or no, you can't do that. But you need to have a good reason, and you should always have a compromise that comes with it. It shouldn't just be no. It should be no, however, or not this, but maybe this. Work with it. Try to figure out how to maximize the fun. More fun for everyone. And that may be a little less fun for one person, so everyone else can have a little bit more fun, but that's kind of where the balance comes in. You might have to give up a little bit in order to give everyone else some. And that's the philosophy of the auxiliary, the more fun for everyone. And that's what I'm trying to teach here, to make this game more fun by teaching how can we maintain more balance? How can we wring every drop of enjoyment out of this really cool sport that we're in? So there are my thoughts on game balance. Tell me how you guys balance your teams down in the comments. I want to hear how other people do it. We have come up with ways that work for us, but they absolutely might not work in your setting. Your scenarios, your people, your players, your location might not work there. You might have something that you have found that works beautifully in this very particular situation. Tell me in the comments, because there might be someone out there who is in a very similar, if not identical situation, who could learn from that. So that's what I want to hear. How do you guys create and balance your teams? How actively do you do it? Do you have in-game mechanisms that people can swap sides? Do you draw lots? Do you just have people pick? Do you have a sign-up sheet? How do you form your teams? And what have you discovered works well to keep the balance so that everyone is having as much fun as possible? There you go. There will be no particular order to future videos. I might do shields next. I might do ammo types. I might do scenarios. I'm listening to you guys, what you guys want to hear about, and I'm working up a schedule that way. So let me know what you want to see, and thank you guys for watching.